Good morning and welcome to Dateline New Haven on WNHH, New Haven's home for the community radio. I'm Paul Bash, your host, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make the Elm City tick. And nothing ticks better than Pundit Friday, which is to begin here, right here in the studio with the number one pundits. Capital P pundits. Media pundits in the media universe. Pundits like the dairy-free goddess of our grassroots radio operation, the belle of our ball, the managing editor of the Inner City News and host of WNHH's Love Babs program. Babs, Rawls Ivy.
Yes, it's
Norma Rodriguez-Reyes is not here today, but she'll be back next week, we hope. We're going to have the flyest news hunter-gatherer this side of Fleet Street back from her tour of the American South and points north of that.
All right.
Star New Haven Independent reporter, the ubiquitous Markeisha Ricks.
Miss Dubai.
I went to visit all the non-existent rural people, black people in
That is
rural
really
America.
interesting. That's really interesting. Everything we read about rural America is about white people.
Exactly.
And you were in
Everything
South
we read
Carolina.
about America is about white people.
Well, there's that.
I'm sorry.
We're hopefully going to be joined
It's like it's going to be that kind of show today.
by
Yeah.
WNHA station manager and heavy D Donald Trump devotee, everybody's pal Harry Drost,
Harry.
the bravest man in New Haven.
Oh, man.
And we also got some other guy here.
Some
Where-
guy.
where's
Some
his-
other
Oh, the blistering
are they?
barbecuer of brain-dead bozos. Our executioner of existential enemies.
Yeah.
The alchemist of assonance and
Yeah.
alliteration. The zealous zapper of xenophobia.
Hmm?
The grandee of grandiloquence and gastronomics.
Mm.
Our prize protector against pusillanimity. The distinguished duke of diplomacy and détente. The bodhisattva of battle rap.
Yes.
The top-tier talent from Trinidad and Tobago. The daft-tone deliverer of decency.
Thank you.
Maximum mixologist Joe Ugly of the Joe Ugly Show in the morning.
This guy is the best.
Good morning, everyone.
Good
Good morning.
morning.
So, did you catch Ned Lamont's speech, the new governor?
No,
on
I
his
did
day of
not.
negative?
Nope.
No,
Did you?
know,
I didn't even know it was a damn ball.
thank you.
I didn't catch the speech either.
Did we know it was a ball though?
Next subject.
Okay.
I
Mar-
saw
I
the
thought we
ball
were
on the
broke.
news.
And in case you were wondering, we skipped Donald Trump's speech too. So
Yeah, I
there's
skipped that too.
Oh,
Mar-
we was at the movies.
Sure was.
Martin
right?
Looney. He's been since the 70s in elected office from New Haven. He's the state Senate president again, this time alone because they're not sharing power with Republicans
Like, we're
anymore.
not sharing no more.
So
Thanks, Donald.
he was reelected state Senate president pro tem.
Oh.
And he said on Tuesday when he was reelected, we're going to focus on family medical leave getting passed and minimum wage going up to $15 an hour. So the Democrats have a near supermajority in both chambers. They have every constitutional office, including governor and lieutenant governor. Think they're going to be able to deliver?
If they can't, then they need to all quit.
That's why you were one of the best pundits in the media universe.
But you know, it's whenever you get one side of one side of the parties, it always have these gridlocks within ranks.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Like the GOP.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you know,
They can't govern.
you,
Like
but
you
they
have the
can't-
House, the Senate, and the White House, and
And you
y'all
still can't get stuff done.
And you know, it's interesting Joe brought that up because I think he's got a great point. And in the legislature, there's the Democratic Republican Party. There's also the urban and the suburban divide.
Right.
Mhm.
So the last time the Democrats were in full control before they had to share power, and this was a little more than 2 years ago,
Mhm.
they were having trouble passing the budget. They even had a Democratic governor. And what they did in the end is that urban legislators in charge, in order to pass the budget, struck a deal with suburbs to screw the cities and take school funding from cities and give it to wealthy suburbs. It's so outrageous a judge.
Hold on, I missed that. You said urban and join forces with the suburbs.
Right. So in other words,
go
Martin
against the
Looney
city.
was, yes, even though there
So
was
when you
city
say-
people in charge, the only way they got the budget passed because
Oh,
of what you're talking about within the party divisions,
right.
suburbs dominate. To get
No,
it
but
passed,
when you
they
said urban and the suburbs join forces, and then you said to go against the
oh, I
cities,
meant urban leaders.
That's what I went.
Yeah,
Okay,
and that's what
okay,
was
all
got
right,
New
okay.
Haven so upset was that urban leaders couldn't pass
Okay.
the budget without suburban Democrats with them
Mm.
and giving the suburban Democrats a shift of money.
Mm, mm,
I'm
mm.
talking a little more than 2 years ago of school aid going from cities to suburbs. And the worst examples weren't here, although New Haven was heard. It was more Bridgeport money was going to Westport.
Mm,
And
mm,
that
mm.
so outraised the judge that he issued a landmark ruling calling the whole state educational funding system unconstitutional,
Wow.
which led to a crisis. He was overturned on appeal. The Democrat government appealed it, but that's how bad it gets. So I think Joe Ugly is on the money which is that the Democrats have a clear path now if they want to legalize marijuana, if they want to bring in tolls, if they want to raise the minimum wage, if they want to get family medical leave. And they'll probably get, I think, the family medical leave. That's getting pretty safe nationally as an issue. Perhaps the minimum wage. But I think Joe's right that it's
They're
not
going to
a
gridlock
clear-
on
not about gridlock, but there's going to be
tolls.
tensions about a lot. Oh, the tolls for sure.
Oh.
But
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, and also urban aid, which is the biggie for New Haven, right? Because
Yeah.
it makes such a difference. We end up having to pay taxes or do major layoffs and cut services based on the whims of the legislature at the last minute after we're far along in our budgeting process, which is why we were caught by surprise. We hadn't planned the way some towns had for not getting as much money.
I
we
wonder
thought
if
we were
this
gonna
call
get.
for regionalism will get more traction in this kind of
No.
environment. No, it's silly though
There's
because
no question
most
that
people
more people
are-
don't agree with it, including some suburban leaders, Babs. Mark Keisha has an interesting point there because Ned Lamont not at his victory speech for the general election, but the primary, he actually made that a very interesting focus of his primary speech at College State Music Hall when he won that night, saying, "I'm going to make a deal with governors. I'm going to help you with your property taxes if you, in turn, will help me cut the cost of government by combining some of these local departments you have regionally. Like, why do we have 150, I think it is, school superintendents for a total state student body that's smaller than New York's with one superintendent? Why do we have all these 911 call centers among the towns? Regionalism is tricky, and I think that's Babs what you're talking about. Because like in the city, if we were to
Because
combine with
everybody's going
suburbs,
to feel
give
like
power.
somebody else is getting something that they're
They're
not getting.
Like
Or
the
you're taking
Allentown
it-
Fire District in West Haven.
Are you taking away something that we deserve, and why don't you go look over there?
Mm-hmm.
I think Lamont wants to take that on. We don't know yet whether Lamont. We know he personally isn't
But do we know
forceful.
anything about Lamont? Because all I'm hearing from everyone is like, if you say, so what do you think of him? I don't know.
It's true. Now he hired a hedge fund guy to be his chief of staff, so maybe he'll be like a whip cracker. He himself is, not obviously very forceful or inspiring fear in people, but he has those opinions. He does have a strongly held opinion about regionalism. So I don't know whether they'll be able to use carrots and sticks to get people on board. People have been talking about regionalism here since at least the 90s.
Oh,
And,
I would go further than that.
Yeah, but there's been this new discussion about CCM, Conference of Municipalities. They had a radio show here with some suburban people say North Haven. See, we're on board for trying it out. So I think they'll do
The
it.
same North Haven whose mayor is talking smack about us.
State senator.
Oh, sorry, whatever he is,
Yeah.
mayor, state senator,
Yep.
dog
same
watcher,
one.
whatever.
So some of it might start in the suburbs. I mean, some of it might be about Hamden and the towns around it, like North Haven.
And
there's-
there's Hamden that is closing the schools because they don't want any more black people there.
well, they have a majority of black students.
But they don't want any more. Is that their deal? What's their
I think
story?
it's more the black student families in Southern Hampton feel that there is such a crazy definition of racial imbalance that Hampton was forced to close schools that they liked in their neighborhood because they're being told they have to be with 15% more white kids in the north of the town.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of nutty.
No.
I mean, you have one school
Is
in
that
Hampton.
the story? What's the real story?
Real
what's
story is
a-
the state said you're out of balance. You got to desegregate the school. You
Isn't
gotta,
New Haven out of balance too?
some of them are. And here's what happened. It was so weird in Hampden. And Hampden also they had financial problems. They need to combine schools. But that Hampton school system, people don't realize this, 62% non-white.
I know that.
But only
Because we
one,
know all the black
only
people
one,
that went to Hamden leaving New
In the
Haven.
summer.
only
70s and
one,
80s?
only one of the Board of Ed members out of 9 is black. He was here on the radio the other day. He went to the
yeah.
school. But so
I
they're
saw
catching
that
up.
too. I
Yeah.
didn't listen to all of it, but
He
yeah,
was an interesting guy.
he's young too.
Yeah, he went to the schools. But what's so interesting, he and I were talking about this. This is the thing you can't believe about racial imbalance rules. So you have this whole formula. If you're and they always define it as white and non-white.
Yep.
So if your non-white population is more than 15% greater than the whole district's population. So if the whole district has a 62% non-white population, no individual school can have more than 85% 7% non-white. Now there's one school that is a quarter Shepherd Glen, a quarter white, a quarter black, a quarter Asian American, and occasionally a quarter Latino. The most diverse school in the entire universe. They speak 27 languages. The state called that out of balance because there are too many non-white kids.
And I think that's the big problem with formulas. They're supposed to be blind to what is actually happening at the school level. And so like they don't end up making sense when you're like, look at this school, it's clearly racially diverse. It's clearly the thing that you're trying to achieve, but you want to do it in the least, what you think is the least hard way to do it instead of looking at each school individually. Like, it's ridiculous.
Because I think, that's that whole, well, I won't discuss this further.
You can discuss
Please
it all
do.
you
No,
want,
no,
Babs. You got the mic.
no.
Well, this gentleman who's on the Board of Ed, Walter Livingston Morton IV, He
That's
said
a lot
that.
of name.
I love his name. And it's funny. He's not all fancy. You think someone with that name? I was
Yeah.
expecting to meet someone with that ascot and all this kind of stuff. You know, he was just some guy.
Smoking cigars.
Like
Good
Roland
guy.
Martin.
And
So he said there was an out. Groton and Stanford there's some out that has a formal name, but it really means to the state, hey, your definition's screwy. It makes no sense to reality here. Give us a waiver. They didn't do it because they said they do want to expand that school, and there wasn't possible on that ground. The building was old, so they're just going to have a new site anyway. But in New Haven, we saw another screwy way that when you try to fix segregation, how it can make it worse. And I'm thinking of Creed School that used to be Hyde.
Mm-hmm.
So after Sheff versus O'Neill, the 1990s, 96 school desegregation lawsuit where the state Supreme Court says you got to desegregate schools, they funded all these magnet schools, including expanding Hyde into Creed. It got to be such a good school for the region that all these black families in inner ring suburbs like West Haven and Hampton wanted to go. But because of their screwy formulas, the school couldn't accept black suburban kids. They had to take white suburban kids so that enough white people would be sitting next to black people. So a desegregation solution ended up discriminating against working and middle-class black families who weren't able to get their kids into a school they wanted because they weren't white. And so what do you do about that? So, Morton was saying, well, we know that housing segregation.
Isn't that the problem in all these schools?
It is. So he says
why
housing.
is it always that they got to try to bust black kids into white
Well,
communities?
that's
Why
been the
can't they do it in
reaction.
reverse?
Because the closer you are to white,
Yeah.
the more success there is.
Yeah. Isn't
So
that
I
the
asked him
nonsense?
about that because a lot of people in Southern Hampton were saying, I don't need my kid to go where there are more white kids. Just fund all the schools well. So there have been two sides to that. A lot of
Wow.
people have said instead of fixing
What a noble
segregation to schools, just make all the
Like,
schools
make the
good, not
resources.
worry so much. But there are other people, including Mr. Morton, who say that, yes, I recognize these concerns, but in the end, he does believe that we should take measures to desegregate schools. He felt as a black student, he benefited from going to really well integrated schools that helped him for life. He thought it was morally and practically an answer. I see
Well,
both
he would
sides.
be wrong.
No. I can agree with that. No, I can agree with that.
I'm not
Let-
agreeing with that.
No, look, quick background. I came to this country and I went to St. Rita's in Hampden, predominantly white, did poorly. I was placed into Fairhaven Middle, ended up doing very well because it was a very diverse school. And that's what it was. And I think I told this story before because the former superintendent, Joel Tarazi, recognized that it was culture shock I went through.
Wasn't it partly because it was not, St. Rita's was overwhelmingly white?
It is.
Right, so that
Well-
would be an argument against schools that are all one or all the other.
But that's
I mean,
what he
I-
said.
no,
He
no.
didn't do well at
Yeah,
that school.
No,
Right.
That's
I
what
did
he's
not do
saying.
well. But when I went to an integrated school,
Yeah.
like Fairhaven Middle, which had blacks, Latinos, Asians, Italians, of course, Irish, of course, because that was predominantly ethnicity.
Right, so you felt
in
diversity
the-
helped. So I
it's
guess
pretty
I'll
much
tell you
that's
why.
what it-
I think both sides are really good in this argument. I'll tell you why I ultimately come down with Babs.
No, but I tell you, this is not a thought pattern. This is facts.
Reality.
Right now. I'm giving the hard facts and reality here is when I literally flunked that year up there, but moved forward to another grade, which I wasn't supposed to go, which according to them I was not ready for. Not only did I thrive in my grade, I ended up getting a scholarship to academic scholarship to Kimball Union Academy in Madison, New Hampshire. So it shows that where that level of integration is needed for some people. For myself, it's needed.
And the example you gave was a black kid in a mostly white school. Where they're trying
He
to
gave
deal
both
with,
examples though,
I give
because he
both
gave
examples.
well,
Fairhaven.
then he said how a diverse school helped everybody.
I'm going to subvert both of these narratives because as someone who went to racially diverse, because I'm an Army brat, I went to racially diverse schools all the way from kindergarten to high school, and then I chose an HBCU, a historically black university, for my undergraduate experience. And I'll tell you the thing that cuts across both situations is having teachers who are dedicated and interested in my well-being.
That is so true.
That is what matters more than money.
And where do we find that?
Because HBCUs are historically underfunded, and I went to schools that were federally funded, and so those schools had the most of what you can have, and some of those, and the colleges that I went to had some of the least of what you can have.
So
Right?
Markeisha, that's why I ultimately agree with Babs, because I think all the points are good on both sides. Especially the important point Joe make, and there's always that whole issue: the money follows. If there are more white students, we got to fix that. And there's also that argument that housing segregation, what leads. So the reason we don't like segregation is we feel like everyone should have an equal opportunity for a good education. So if you fund all schools well and make them all good, I think that can have an opposite
part to that.
impact on housing segregation, then people wouldn't be so scared about where they buy their houses. And they can work in reverse to get rid of housing segregation. And you're not having this quest for well-meaning but backfiring solutions like the ones that make Hyde discriminate against black kids, like that closed the most diverse school in the universe at Shepherd Glen. I don't know, Harry, what do you think about this issue?
No, well, he's
like,
thing.
as someone who is not white or black.
Right. Well, here's the thing that I went to a predominantly black school in where I grew up, but who cares, right? Because I didn't do good anyway. It didn't matter. I was such a delinquent. I was such a delinquent that it didn't really matter.
Just for the record, you have never
But I
been
think
a
there's
delinquent.
like that's actually an important point, because I think there are those kinds of students. Like, there are kids who are going to be like super delinquent. There are kids like me who are going to thrive everywhere. Like, they're really
But he
like,
wasn't a
unless you are
delinquent. It's more
deliberately
complicated.
like, unless you are deliberately trying to thwart. And there are some people who believe that they are in schools where there are teachers and administrators deliberately trying to thwart their progress because of the color of their skin. Like, that's a whole different problem.
Joe's first
but, like,
example, St. Rita.
But like,
that was my problem.
but
You
a
are with
kid
me.
like me, like, if you put me in an environment like it. If you put me in an environment where the administrators care about seeing me succeed, I'm going to succeed. Like, I was going to be that kid anyway.
You know, a part to the equation that you mentioned as being a veteran myself and understanding the, the diversity because of different races in the military. But there's also another part to that, is that the teachers come with their baggages from their home state.
True.
You have someone who comes from the South who feel that blacks, that teacher might not give you
That's true.
any attention. And opposed to, and I'm not diluting what you're saying, but what I'm saying, like, if I look at a teacher who's coming in from Fairhaven who has to deal with these people 15, 20 years opposed to 3 to 4 years, change is usually the changeover in military schools.
Babs,
maybe
any
6,
last words on that?
6 or 7.
On what? On
The school issue, or we all
I,
good?
listen, I grew up seeing my sister bus to Hamden because we lived in Churchill South, and my sister is brilliant, and the stress of that on her, she grew into it, but it was stressful.
Wow.
And so I just never, ever since that, I just never thought. I always just had this mindset that why can't schools where I grew up in be the better schools? Why do we always have to send our kids to be with white people?
That's why I think there's no alternative.
And I'm not
to
saying we
adequately
can't have
funding schools to make
integrated
them good.
schools, but
But why
think,
is integration always a one-way street?
Right.
yeah,
Why is it
and it's
always
always
one-way
at
street?
our expense,
Yes.
man. I was
You
like,
know,
I
So
don't.
that's why
You
I
said
think that it's
something
that's why I think well-meaning solutions go off the rails. I think there's no substitute for just making all the schools good,
You know, it's
and
interesting.
then let
I'm sorry.
the
And just let
effects
the-
come
yeah.
from that.
Yeah, let the schools be good.
And I
Because
really
this
think
is-
that's my point about my experience. Like, I went to good schools. Like, it wasn't so much whether like, this school that I was at was an all-black school, and this school that I was at was racially diverse. Like, it black people are diverse too, so there's
Right.
that. But, like, it mattered that the schools that I went to were good, that had, people in those schools that really cared about, and not that there aren't teachers that don't care, but, like, they feel like they have the resources they need, that they're doing the thing that they love, and so they're putting that into the
And
kids
so
that come out
making,
of those schools.
having that insistence for all schools to be like that, rather
Absolutely.
than create this magnet that'll get so good that we have to discriminate against suburban black
Absolutely.
students to make the numbers right. Yeah, I don't think there's a way around saying to people we do have
That
to
all
have
the schools
taxes,
have to be
we do have
equitable.
to have
Yeah.
money,
And
we do have to,
and we sort of act as though there aren't any segregated schools. Money is the biggest segregator of anything.
Bang, so true.
Hello,
So
private
true.
school.
So true. You know, Babs,
Like,
this morning,
come
just this morning, something hit me that this morning. I'm on my way to work, and you guys know what time I got to get there. I got there. I'm
3 a.m.?
crossing out. No. I was crossing the street, Orange Street, back, over Orange and Chapel, at 5:45, and there's a kid getting on a bus to
That's
go
crazy.
to school.
Oh,
Was he young?
yeah.
Thought
Oh,
about
you see
that.
kids getting
And
on
I'm
the
like,
train to
how
go to
old was
school.
he? How
like,
old was he?
He was a teenager. I say roughly around 15, 16, but
Well, the
still.
bus thing's crazy. Little kids get bused an hour a day to go from the east side to
Yeah.
to
It's outrageous.
Truman
It is.
School to
Why
West
can't
Rock,
we
Catherine
just
Brennan.
fund our schools correctly?
Why can't every school
Why
be
can't-
equal?
Jabber,
Why
jabber,
can't we
right there.
say-
And thank you for listening, Jabber, jabber. I went to a predominantly black school in elementary and middle school and was failing in high school that was racially diverse. There my grades improved. I agree with racial diversity. Thank you, Jabber, jabber. I think we all agree that we like racial diversity, but maybe trying
We
to
don't like
fix-
it for its own sake.
Right, and then maybe that's not the way, in my
I
opinion.
mean, the workforce will give you racial diversity if you work like outside of like a black newspaper.
But I was just thinking, how do you get there?
But that could be white math though in some
Thank you,
career
Jabba
fields.
Jabba, for that. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in here to Pundit Friday
Like ask that girl who mixed it up with AK.
on WNHH 103.5 FM, your home for community radio.
Rachel.
At
Chelsea is having a bad day.
www.newhavenindependent.org. Hey, there was an interesting quest for details that's partly thwarted still about a big incident in Kimberly Square this week. So a cop fired his gun, Frank Sanchez. Frank Sanchez had an interesting day. He started the day with this undercover unit just looking for people who have warrants, right? So he's downtown. He says, oh, there's that guy that had that warrant. The guy speeds away, takes the cops on a chase from downtown to Tweed, New Haven, on the tarmac, crashes through a gate into a police car. Then he goes on the highway, West Haven, pick up the chase, comes back
I
to
was in
West.
that chase
Tell me about
on
it.
Forest Road.
Well, they got to Forest Road at the end. He came back from West Haven onto Forest Road into.
I was in it.
And where were you? Like, what happened?
I'm going up Forest Road on my way to my trainer in West Haven around noon, 11 o'clock. The car comes. He's in this big SUV, right? It's the
I don't know.
SUV. It's shot up. The windows are shot up.
Wow.
So I drive up on somebody's land because he is coming in the middle of Forest Road. And it's like a gazillion cars chasing him. I didn't know what happened. So a little man pulled up to me. He's like, did you see that? I was like, yeah, you saw me run up on these people's grass because I had to get out the way. He's like, yeah, did you see that car was all shot up? So when I got to my trainer, I said, hey, this thing that happened. I didn't make the connection that he got all the way to Tweed. He went to Tweed to West Haven and back down to Forest Road
And then
into
to
New
Amity,
Haven.
and then the Amity Shopping Center where they got him. He got out of
is
the
that
car
where
in
they-
another
that's
car,
where-
and then they found him.
That's
So
crazy.
Frank Sanchez, I don't think was in that whole chase. These guys spotted him, right?
I was in it.
So then later, hours later, he's in Kimberly. I'm glad you're okay, by the way.
I'm
Right?
Me
Like,
too.
I'm glad.
How was your session with the trainer?
That was good.
Okay. Good. Yes. And then later that
Happy
day, Frank
hour.
Sanchez is in the Hill. And he goes, and he and his guy say, oh, there's another guy we wanted, right? So this guy takes
Frank
off.
should have went home.
So then
Frank was
everyone's
busy.
ready. So then all these cops are chasing this guy, and they get into, I think, a driveway. And the guy turns around. It's a little unclear what happened. The state police are suggesting, because they investigate any time a cop fires a weapon, they're suggesting that this suspect turned around, pointed a gun at the cops, and fired. And the cops fired back. Frank Sanchez fired back, which it is traumatic to get shot at and to shoot someone. Frank Sanchez hit him in the stomach with the bullet. Then the officers, so there were cops all over the place. The guy kept running. And then some other cops found him. And he's bleeding from the stomach. They handcuffed him, and then they kept him alive. So they knew, like how the cops get, understandably.
What do you mean kept him alive?
They
God
stayed-
kept him alive.
No, yeah. So anyway, they sat him up. They were pressed on his stomach. They had him keep talking, all this first aid training until the medics came and the guy is okay. So whenever a shooting like this happens, state police come in and take it over, which theoretically makes sense because you can't have a department investigate itself. The problem is the state.
Well, you shouldn't.
The problem is that the state police, I would not trust them to look at a bomb and say it wasn't the police fault if the bomb put him off. I mean, the state police investigated, quote unquote, that case in New Haven after Trump was elected when one of their horrible cops was a long record of brutality, a vicious dog on a 67-year-old unarmed man who they were mad at because at another location half an hour ago they didn't like what he was saying on a loudspeaker.
Yeah.
And they clear him on that. And they were beating the crap out of people. So I would never trust the state police to investigate anything.
Wow.
But in any case,
Well,
and
Paul,
then
Paul,
Lamont's
could we
made
just
these other
unpack
good
what you just
appointments,
said?
but he took from their ranks to run the state police, so that's not going to change.
What you just said is
They're
so
an army.
deep.
They're an army.
It is so deep to think that you don't feel comfortable. You don't trust.
I read the report.
You-
I FOI'd it. It was a
No, but
ridiculous
I'm
report.
saying
They-
you don't trust them. How do you think a black person feel when he or she gets pulled over on the side of the road?
Well, even New
They'll
Haven
think of
cops
the
who are much
next
better,
level.
I don't trust them to investigate themselves either, but that's a different issue. They're
Yeah.
not like the state police who are an army.
Yep.
But in any case,
My point here, it is. I hope law enforcement is listening and realize they have such a mission
Don't pull me over
to
today.
police
I-
yourself.
oh,
They
Jabbar.
have to police themselves.
Just don't pull me over today.
You know, that makes you cringe when you think there are citizens out here who don't.
Because
who
I don't want
can't
anybody to be like,
trust
I heard
law
you on the radio.
enforcement.
But in any case, In this case, I did not see any reason at this point to doubt the police story, but we won't hear the full story for a while. So when this first chase I talked about, I didn't know that his windows were shot up because they didn't tell us.
No, they were.
And that's what I'm saying. This is very interesting information, Babs. And all this information, because they have a legitimate reason not to give out too much information while they investigate a case, because they want witnesses not to say what they saw based on what they heard.
Oh, they're going to pull you over.
In other words, like when you investigate
witness.
a case, if certain information's out while a case is being investigated, that can ruin the investigation because they want to ask a witness what the witness saw without the witness being influenced by what the witness heard released. But that becomes an excuse to tell you nothing. Like there's no reason they shouldn't have told us that the windows were smashed, shot up.
Yeah, they were shot up. I mean,
So
they
they were
weren't. It was.
so
He had
this
the
is-
window, but
so
it was
Forest
shot.
Road, which is a windy
The front window.
And you were driving on Forest Road, which is windy, one
Yes.
state road, one lane, very dangerous road. To have a lot of cops chasing this guy
Oh my
at
God.
high speed, I don't think was wise. But
And
we
it was
can't-
high speed, and it was
and we-
West Haven cops
yeah.
directly
we
behind
can't,
him.
and we can't analyze this because they give us so little information for months until they finish, including information they can release. So in the case of this shooting in Kimberly Square, I do think it's important not to jump to conclusions that the police are wrong. Like often an event happens and your instinct tells you there might be something here the police didn't do right. Like in that case with the dog going after the 67. There's no reason a dog has to go after the 6-7-year-old man. In this case, I heard absolutely nothing to doubt the police story. Doesn't mean in the end the police did something else might emerge. But it is tough when you're a cop. If you're getting shot at or the gun's pointed at you, sometimes you do have to fire. Maybe you don't need to get in that position in the first place, but I feel bad for this guy Sanchez based on what I know. But in any case, we don't know the whole story until it happens, right? Till the whole investigation gets done. But there was an interesting debate about how we wrote about it. I was wondering if Babs could read the comment. So we first had a headline on the story. We talked about how the police, because, police get like any other group of people when they feel endangered. They close ranks when a police officer fires a gun or is shot at, because that's the moment when you're a cop that everyone's scared of. That's the most intense part of being a cop, is that you could not come home one day. So because of that, they sometimes, not in this case, sometimes cops have been known to collect their stories, to change it, right, to defend their cop in that case. But in other cases, that's not the case, so we shouldn't assume that. So in this case...
Paul, I got to pause you for 1 second. I really do. Cops got to worry about if they can't come home one day. I don't want to have to worry every day if my son is going to come home.
True. I agree with that. That's why I'm saying that, we have to get the full story. But in any case, in this case, it was interesting that even though the officers closed ranks, they did want to save the life of this guy. And I think that matters, too.
Okay.
And they should do that as part of their job. Here's the guy, because your adrenaline's up. Everyone's around. They don't know this guy allegedly just shot a cop. They don't know the details at a cop. And they grab him, and your adrenaline's up. And I do think that some cops might not have, in other cities perhaps, dealt with them well. Because we know cases where people don't really create a threat and
You
they kill
got to
them.
sell me on that. I
Yeah,
listen.
really.
So in any case, so on the headline of that, but we don't have all the information out because certain things can't
We don't
be
need
said
the
at the investigation.
information. We know.
So our headline was "Cops Keep Cop Shooter Alive," and I changed the headline after the following comment was posted by one of my favorite commenters who cares a lot about language, and that's the Reverend Samuel Ross Lee.
And
And he
that's
got
one
a
of the
lot
few things that I like about him.
Words matter, and
That's
he
probably
really
the only thing.
he's a very close reader of words.
He
and what
is.
they
He
mean.
is.
So
He is.
can you read what he wrote?
And a person who actually shot a police officer, parentheses, by that I mean actually hit the officer with a bullet from a gun, close parentheses, and someone who has shot at in capital letters, a cop, parentheses, but not hit the officer with the bullet, close parentheses, the same thing. If they are not, then the person in this story is not a cop shooter, quote unquote, as the title claims. He is merely someone who attempted to shoot a cop and missed. And then brackets, Paul, headline changed, period, thanks.
So I thought that was a really
Brackets
good point.
closed.
I took out cop shooter, and there was a backlash against Samuel Ross Lee. Mostly cops. but
Which he
not only
likes, I
cops.
bet.
know.
He's like, bring it.
Well, no, I'm with him too. You like
I'm with him
raise
too.
some
Yeah,
comfortable points and let's
it's a
talk
right-
about it.
it's-
So
it's a
all
right
the
thing to
cops were
bring up.
really upset with him because they said that, and not just cops. They say, "Come on, what's the difference? The guy's shooting." By the way, we don't know for sure that the guy shot at the cops. I think he did because they found the gun. There's a video apparently where he threw it over a fence, and we'll find out when
trying to get rid of the gun.
Yeah,
right. Because
right. But in any case,
come with mandatory.
That you're not supposed
and
to have.
I'll be surprised in the end if the officer did anything wrong, but you never know. But I thought Reverend Russell Lee was deep. Point was deep about the nuances of language, but other people felt that. And people want to be able to vent against somebody when they're upset that a cop got shot at. But a lot of people felt that
and
Ross
also,
Lee,
not for nothing, in this moment, cops feel picked upon. Like, I see it all the time. And even in the cops that I'm connected to that I think are a little more savvy than that, they feel picked on. They do.
Babs, do you feel
Rightly or
like reading
wrongly.
what some of the people wrote in response to Reverend Ross Lee?
No. I think Ross Lee was dead on because I think, here's the thing. Ross Lee is not being provocative for the sake of being provocative. He really is a lover of language, as am I.
Because it's powerful, the nuances of language.
It is. And if these people would just catch their breath and really think about what he is saying as opposed to what they think they're feeling, then they would make the same leap too. Because what they're going on is what they imagine he's saying, that we're taking the onus off someone shooting at cops. No, that's not what we're saying.
But I think
he's just saying that
he's
this
saying, let's be
doesn't say
careful.
what it means.
Right.
Like, it's
And
not
that it matters to say
accurate.
what it means because we don't have all the facts.
Because you don't have all the facts.
I did this long introduction about we don't have all the facts.
Right.
We don't have to assume anything bad about anybody,
Right.
but we don't have all the facts. And I think people got upset with Russ Lee because they feel like, well, why are you focusing on that aspect rather than how tough it was for the
it's
cop?
hard. Truth is,
And also,
painful.
people nitpick when it's like, and not that Ross Lee is nitpicking, but conversely, for those people, they will nitpick a story. Or why did you say this thing this way when it is to their advantage?
And
to
while
see
I think
it
it's
that
the
way.
opposite of nitpicking in Reverend Russ Lee's,
I do.
but yeah, I know
think
we
it
all
is.
do, because I think he was saying the person who was arrested is also a person. Now, it might turn out he was dead wrong and horrible. It might not. Like, it might have, what happened there, like one person was explaining to me that even, because the cops always have a united story, right?
But even if he did shoot at the cop, he's still a person.
Right.
And we have got to stop this notion of other. I mean, because the danger in other is that you lose your humanity in the way that you deal with
Right
them.
on point.
So that means you could just treat them any old kind of way because they are
Right.
no longer human in
and
your
Chief
eyes.
Campbell said that's why he was so pleased with how the officer did what they're supposed to do in the way they attended the guy who was arrested. Yeah, it's just kind of interesting to me because there's also the truth based on my reporting experience that a story ends up looking a lot different when all the facts are in.
Yeah.
And that's why Reverend Ross Lee, again, I think he was speaking from experience having a congregation where he's had members on both sides of these divides. And you realize that if you're dealing with people as people, how important it is to wait till all the facts are in before you judge.
I mean, it's like that story with the little girl was killed by somebody shot up at the car and it was whatever. And they saw the white guy in the red pickup leaving and they thought that he was the one. But when the facts came out and they got the real folks, it wasn't that guy. It was two black guys that they got.
That's the one that went down last week.
Yeah, that was
yes,
deep.
Yes.
And by the way, his name was Jabbar. I got his name wrong. And he said NHPD, great training. Needs to be taught to other cities and counties across the U.S. Doing a good job, NHPD, not shooting to kill versus what happened in New Britain. Thanks for weighing in, Jabbar. You're definitely a great part of the conversation. This conversation taking place on Pundit Friday. On
This is the
WNHH.
first time you said it.
You're home at 103.5 FM, blogs, Actually, I got the 15-minute mark, but I missed the 30 mark. And thanks for joining the conversation, everybody, on Facebook Live. So, cops, Marquise just pointed out that police officers feel under the gun, so to speak. I mean, literally under the gun in Canton Square, but in general. Because there's been a lot of debate in town about a civilian review board, a citizen group to investigate complaints against the cops. And after years of arguing what form a new version that should take, they finally passed one Monday night, where it seems like, even though it doesn't say it, it will have power to subpoena cops. Already the horrible lawyer from the city who we pay tax money just to find out ways to keep information from the public has already advised at a police commission meeting this week that we don't believe it allows civilian review power. You're going to have to go to court to prove it.
This is going to court, exactly.
Yeah. What was it like Monday night?
Monday night was really interesting because as you've seen in a lot of the tension in the previous meetings, and all of the back and forth of trying to negotiate among activists and among board of alders and a board of alders among themselves, it ended up being a night where I think people like on both sides of the issue, like not necessarily both sides of the issues because the cops weren't represented there, but alders who had been kind of fast and furious at this here in the last few hours, like days of it and weeks of it, and activists kind of came to a place where they agreed, like we have enough to go forward, and it's strong enough to go forward. And so people were, kind of congratulatory of themselves of having really buckled down and get this done.
Did they deserve the congratulations? Will this be a good body that will be able to investigate with credibility and fairness?
I think a key advocate, Emma Jones, who's been involved in this for 20 plus years, felt like it was a good enough foundation to start from. She's like, it's not what she had pushed for and wanted. It wasn't as tough as she had pushed for all those years, but she's like, it's a good place to start.
Babs?
You already know how I feel about this. I don't have anything else to say about it.
Okay. Well, there was another army being formed this week in New Haven by Rosa DeLauro, the congresswoman. Babs was watching. I mean, not Babs. Marquisha was watching it at Celentano School. What was she up to? Who was she recruiting?
She's recruiting 7th and 8th graders to fight big tobacco in this new iteration of a generation to be exposed to nicotine. She is trying to get kids to help her stop these vaping.
So she's not focused on cigarettes. She's focused on e-cigarettes.
She's
right?
focused on e-cigarettes.
Was there a slogan for this?
Don't get fooled, and fooled is spelled F-U-U-L apostrophe.
I saw that. Isn't that on the Independent?
Yes,
because it's Juul, J-U-U-L. Those
so yeah,
e-cigarettes.
there's a really popular e-cigarette out right now that's it's like I call it the Keurig of e-cigarettes because it uses flavor pods to load it, so it's like really easy to use.
Grown-ups are not going to have Cheerio flavored smoking things. I mean,
so all these kids are getting hooked on it, sometimes really painfully,
right?
Yeah, deeply addicted to this. And also they give you a more intense hit of the nicotine,
yeah,
right,
like
a cigarette.
one Juul pod can have as much nicotine as an entire pack of cigarettes.
And and parents can't detect this.
Yeah.
Right? Parents can't detect this because it's not like old school smoke.
You don't see a
like
cigarette
my mama
in the
could
bag.
catch me
You're
with
like,
a cigarette, right?
You might not know what that is.
You can have this in the house and
so
just
how do you
be
deal
like,
with it? So what should we be doing? Is Rosa right that we need to have an army? Because she also wants a law that stops them from selling those flavors. And she also wants kids to spread the word.
She also wants to close the loophole because, of course, cigarettes are taxed pretty heavily, particularly in Connecticut. We have I think the highest taxes on cigarettes in the country right now. But if you buy a packet, the entry level cost of vaping is pretty expensive, about $50 for a starter kit.
What?
But after
how
that,
long?
Who the hell is doing that? Kids?
I mean, if you steal it from somebody,
but the
they don't know
starter
you have
kit
it.
is a totally different thing, right?
Exactly,
So
the starter
you
kit,
have the whole
but
battery,
you get that and the battery,
vape,
all that, and the actual. You get some Juul pods. To re-up is only like $15. So you can get a 4-pack of Juul pods, which are basically 4 packs of cigarettes for $15.
And all those kids
1 pack of cigarettes in Connecticut almost costs $15.
Yeah, that's true.
So I was thinking, kids don't think, and it's seen as something that's safer because you don't have to inhale all of the toxins and stuff that you get from smoking cigarettes.
And the old school tobacco company bought a controlling
share of Juul.
Of course
now,
they did.
What's interesting is Juul sees itself as a smoking cessation company. It doesn't build itself as a smoking company.
Because it helps adults quit.
But exactly, it saw itself as a startup
and
for
crack is a weight loss
technology. But they're not regulated the same way cigarettes are.
I was like, what is that?
And so, but it matters that a big tobacco, a Philip Morris, just put $12 billion
I think
or
Weight
something.
Watchers should start selling crack.
Well, here's the thing about that. While it does help older people quit, the whole game,
it gets kids hooked.
Tobacco companies' game for generations has been to addict the teenagers because that's when your brain is still forming.
Yeah,
more
you don't know
quickly.
how to make decisions.
So
to say, I shouldn't do this.
Nobody's going to start smoking at 50.
If they hook you at 15, they got you for life. So now they can hook you more intensely than ever with this. It made me also think when I was reading the studies on marijuana, which I didn't realize because I haven't smoked pot for 30 years. And apparently, when you take a hit now, it's 5 times more concentrated with THC than it was in our day.
Whoa.
That's an intense
stronger
point. And they're saying that has public health implications.
Like what?
Well,
Like
no,
it gets
why-
people
why
more
is it-
zoned out and
But
more
why is it 5 times more now?
because they've just
Because they
improved the
can
growing.
improve it, yeah.
Oh,
More
man,
bang
you
for
know,
your buck.
More bang for your bucks. You know, I gotta say, you know, shout outs to Congresswoman Delores for targeting seventh. What do you say?
7th and 8th
7-year-old or
graders.
7th and 9th graders. That's a great.
That's
Great
the that's
age.
the
That's the age.
So,
yeah.
yeah, you know, we know this. It's something, but who was taking action? She took action, and that's why I'm giving her the shout out.
And it seems like she's doing a combination of non-governmental solutions, like have the teenagers talking. Markeisha talks to some teenagers talking about how they watch friends and family get started and how to spread good information, which is no better solution than that. But they're also talking other things government can do with regulation.
I
that
think
it
it's
tries to
really
keep it-
interesting though, because I'm from a generation who probably lived through a bunch of no smoking, like say no to drugs and
Right.
DARE programs and things like that.
Mhm.
And but also, you know, my mother was a smoker. All of her siblings smoked at one point. And I just thought smoking was gross. Like I didn't like the way like being in a smoker's house made my clothes smell. And so she and I would get into it once I was like coming home from college. I was like, I'm not coming home anymore because I don't want to smell like cigarette smoke when I leave.
So what did you
like,
do?
You know, so she would do more like smoking outside and like, but like it was her house, so she could smoke where she wanted. So I'd be really aggressive.
Because that's what I would have said. I was like,
I would block my door when I was at her house, like, and so that, and I'd be like, you can't come in my room with cigarettes, or I'd be like, I don't have to come home, like, I can stay somewhere else, but like, we would get into it. So she never did stop until she, you know, developed dementia and forgot to smoke.
You know, I have to say, I have the same concern you did. I always was bothered by cigarette smoke, although I think people should be left alone if they want to smoke. The tricky thing is in people's houses because it is their house.
It is their home.
And a smoker can't tell how
Except
a
if
non-smoker's
you live in
affected.
public
and they
housing.
can't. Oh, true. That's true. I was
That's
just
a
thinking
big
of
issue
that
now.
too.
So public housing, they've shifted nationally.
if you could put
It's like if
screws to
Jewel wants a
anybody,
market,
you're
it's
gonna do
there.
it for poor people.
Right, and in public housing, the non-smokers of health is really affected in public housing because it does seep through everything, the hallways and in
Well,
your
we
door.
don't say that about condominiums or
So
They
apartment
do,
houses.
they do,
They
Babs,
do.
they
They have
do.
rules.
Do they?
They do.
There's
the
no
condo-
smoking in
I
apartments.
will
Yes,
say
a lot of
this.
them have those rules now
This I found
because
this
they care
interesting.
about their health and they don't care about poor people's health.
I found this interesting though. When I moved here, people here really smoke a lot. Like, so I lived in the DC area, and I don't know if it's because federal buildings are like, you can't smoke here and you can't stand out here because we will arrest you.
Right. But
That there are like people don't smoke on the street like that. Like it's like you don't see it as much. So I wonder what that is. Like, what is the culture of that? Because people here really do smoke a lot, in my opinion. I see lots of people on the street smoking in public.
But is it because, like you just said, is it because that they don't smoke a lot, or is it because that you know
They don't have
better
any
than
place to smoke around. Like, even because, you know, when there's like, oh, you can't smoke in this building. All right, so there's this place for smokers.
Right.
But I almost felt like it was frowned upon to smoke. Like, people had
I
a
think
general
now it is.
culture that
But now Jewel has
smoking
changed the
is
game.
outside of, like,
'Cause I was a
the story
smoker.
from the New York Times about the woman who
I
used
was.
Jewel to quit. Like, she felt like it was socially unacceptable to smoke, that she didn't like smelling like smoke, that she felt like people were judging her, so she felt uncomfortable smoking, and Jewel allowed her to, you know,
So,
not
Babs, what
deal with
got you
that.
to quit? And why did you quit and when?
My nephew was born. When my nephew arrived, I just felt like I didn't want to smoke around him, and I had him so much that, you know, and I smelled like smoke, and I read something that said
That secondhand smoke.
not even secondhand smoke, that the toxins from the smoke gets in your clothes. And so, and I had him, and I just didn't want him to be
So as
exposed
much
to
as
that.
I'm against Jewel, I wonder if this is a solution what you're talking about public housing, because I thought you did bring up a good point. I think people do have a right to smoke in their home. So if you're poor in public housing, Babs is saying, well, why should just because you're poor now you can't smoke? But other people who live in public housing who are poor and have kids don't want their kids to get asthma.
I get it.
So I wonder if Jewel is the solution in public housing.
And that's the thing. I'm
Look,
conflicted.
Can we just hand
I'm
them a
conflicted
marketing
the
plan?
I think we did. For adults. And so they claim that they want adults only, like they don't want kids. They crack down on their website and who can buy stuff and age verification.
But they're
blah,
full
blah,
of
blah,
it.
blah.
They just did the deal with Atria.
I'm just telling
This
you
whole
what
game
they
plan.
When your
said. I'm
Jews
not
turn
saying
into
they actually
fools,
doing
yes,
it.
Okay.
But I think what Babs had to say is important is
Okay.
why what Rose is doing, actually reaching out to kids, is kind of important as well, because people do stop for their kids. My mama didn't, but like,
And nephew.
but like
Babs'
people do
nephew.
stop for their kids.
I did. I
And
stopped
like
for my
if
nephew.
your kid's like going on about, mommy, you're gonna die if you keep smoking, like you're gonna get cancer, I'm gonna get cancer, we all gonna die. Like that people get like, okay, give me a Juul and I'm good. so Juul had been around. My mother tried to stop smoking though. She tried the patch. She and I both have this issue where we're allergic
Addiction's
to
deep.
the patches. Any type of patch you put on us will break us out. So they hurt. It's painful for us.
Yeah.
But
feel
if
for your
something
mom.
like
Addiction's
Juul had
hard.
existed, I think she would have tried it.
All right, so we got a
Juul.
solution here.
Is she still a smoker? Or you
No,
said
she
stopped?
doesn't smoke anymore.
Yeah.
That's good.
All right. Well, listen, everyone. Thanks for joining us today.
I
on
know,
Dateline
no
New Haven.
hot button, no fired up at the end.
I
Kinda.
thought Markeisha was, but she
Yeah.
kind of. I thought she brought it
I
home.
was
She
like,
always brings it
period.
home.
Oh,
Markeisha
can I
Ricks.
just say shout out to Markeisha for that good reporting on my nephew,
That was
Benjamin.
Benjamin.
with the
it
banner
was-
up at the
Yeah.
armory? He's
Yeah.
battling
It's a great
cancer.
photo of him.
Yeah,
You're
it's a
related
great-
to Marty? And,
Yeah.
That's
didn't
that
know that.
banner
My,
that went
my
up.
brother is married to Dana.
oh, that's right. That's
So-
right. Whoa. Whoa.
Yeah.
And that's the
Hey.
Kids Matter banners. They're going around town. And this one
Yeah.
yesterday that Markeisha wrote about in the Independent seemed like one of those moments when the community comes together.
Yeah.
We care about people.
Yeah.
And the divisions get put aside.
And
we
he's
hope
in
that
palliative care now.
16
so,
years old. Yeah.
Yeah.
And your
Yeah.
brother and Dana were out there, so in the
So I
freezing
sent, I sent them.
cold.
I sent everybody in our family.
Can I
the
just ask you something?
cookies.
I saw that in the New Haven Independent they had Bo Sandine. Is that the Bo Sandine from New Haven back in the day?
Yeah, I think he is. I think
Yeah.
so.
He used to be on Y
Yeah,
on the
he
other
was-
radio
He's back.
station. He's back.
Uh-huh.
Is he over there too?
What radio
Yeah.
station
He's
was that? Joe?
he's the project manager for iMatter for that project.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
is
he's,
he
he's
back on
back on the.
broadcasting?
I think he's doing the radio part time. I
Oh,
think.
I don't know about
Bo
that.
was a big name back in
What
the.
radio station? You were about to mention
YBC.
one.
Oh no, it's not Ugly Radio. So let's.
Oh. Okay, I'm gonna leave that alone. It's not WNHH.
There we go.
I noticed Joe. I noticed that Joe was catching himself.
Yeah,
there.
you saw that. You know,
Yeah,
of course.
I think
Paul
he's-
had
I
to
think
catch
he's
me with the
Is he
part-time.
ugly.
doing radio again?
I think that's what Michelle Turner said. I gotta.
I mean, he
follow
was
up.
a big name back in the day.
He was like everything.
I mean, here you had this white kid who was like, he went to Cross, and I think he also did my prom. Yeah, I mean, he was this big name around here back then. Then he went out to Kansas.
What's his name?
Bo
Bo
Sandine.
Welcome back, Bo.
Oh, I
Yeah,
know.
man.
I wonder if I could get him on.
Yeah,
I'll-
holla
I'll
at me.
give
I
you
get
his
you on the Joe
information.
Rogan
Yeah,
in the
give me
morning.
his
I gotta
number.
talk
I
to
would
him.
love
Bo
to talk to
knows.
him.
Bo knows.
Because
Bo
I
knows.
grew up listening to Bo Sandine,
Yeah.
man.
But it's crazy because
With my cassette player, trying to
he
get all
used
the music,
he used to go to Cross,
making my mixtapes.
and then he was on YBC in the evening.
Yeah.
You know, after school, you listening to Bo Sandine. You know, he was oh
Yeah.
man, this was the guy, man.
Yeah, I hope you can get him
we
on
have
the
a big
show.
flashback.
I
That'd be
would love to
great.
talk to him.
Oh
God.
man, I saw that. I saw your article.
yeah.
Great article, by
Does
the way.
does always
He's
happen at the
actually
end
in
when it's
the-
hard to say goodbye.
And
The
if you
best
really
part
wanna
always
check,
comes
he's
at the
actually
end.
speaking at the end of the Facebook Live video that I did, so just forward to it, and he's at the end talking.
Oh, is that right? Okay. All right.
So make sure that's him.
The
It is
show
a
is
white
over,
guy.
baby.
Welcome back, Bo. Welcome back.
Welcome back.
And welcome back, Markeisha Ricks, because that's what makes it the
Yay!
Pundits.
Absolutely.
And we'll
Along
see
with,
Norma
She's
again.
back from
and not just
Dubai.
Markeisha Ricks, but along with Babs Rolls Ivy,
Babs Rolls
Joe
Ivy.
Ugly, Harry Drost, and Norma Rodriguez Reyes,
Gang's
the
all-
best pundits in
almost
the
all here.
business.
Norma will be back next time.
We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic experience, performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free. You know what? Let's all feel that way all weekend long. And join that flight with us here at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.